All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol. Very special guest today. Greg McHale is joining us. Greg is a well-known hunter, content creator, TV show host, adventure sports enthusiast, and kind of a shining example of like a Canadian who I don't want to say made it, but like there's not a whole lot of us Canadians in the hunting and outdoor industry that have really kind of made their own mark and made their own path. And Greg is a really good example of somebody who's done that. So I asked him to come on the podcast because I think he's got a lot of really interesting things to share that we can all learn from. So thanks for taking the time, Greg. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Jay. No, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the intro, and I'll try to live up to it.
No problem. So maybe just to get out, for those of you those of us who don't know you or aren't familiar with your background, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. How did you? I know you're in the Yukon now. Is that where you were kind of born and raised? And how were you initially exposed to the outdoors and develop your passion?
Yeah. So, I live in the Yukon now, and I've been here for 26 years. I grew up in Ontario, kind of rural farm country living. I grew up in a small town called Palmerston. There's a couple thousand people, but I spent all my weekends out on my grandparents' farm. So that's kind of really where I grew up, and that was the foundation, I guess, to the outdoors. But, growing up in Ontario and in farm country, there really is no wilderness, right, in Southern Ontario. So you have to travel a fair ways to go and find wilderness. And kind of where it started, I would say my love for the outdoors and like for the wilder places is on family holidays. My dad was a big fisherman and way more into fishing but we did go up north and, north of Sault Ste. Marie, where he grew up, and we would take, our big old car and pack it full of all of our, the camping stuff that you could fit into a car, drive down a logging road as far as you can go and then set up camp. And that would have been our holiday for the year. Yep. So it was, pretty humble beginnings for sure. And just, that's how we were introduced to the outdoors. And, to this day, I still get to get out with my father, and it's pretty important. And now he lives up in the Yukon as well. So coming from, Ontario to here is a huge change. I remember coming home, I was working while I was going to university, and coming home to my girlfriend and saying, who was my wife now, and saying, we're going to, let's go to the Yukon after school. And she kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah. A, where is the Yukon? and then B, like, what are you actually thinking here? Because Denise's idea of a family holiday was a RV in Florida and Epcot Center. So yeah. She definitely didn't come from an outdoors background, which is, probably a better story than mine. At least I was ingrained in it from an early age, where she definitely wasn't. I kind of brought her into this world where she now has done unbelievable things in the outdoors and is, one of the highest level athletes our country has ever seen in outdoor sports. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey for not just me, but for our whole, for her as well. And now we have 2 kids up in the Yukon, and it's just it's a great place to be, about as far removed from Ontario as you can get and still be in the same country.
Well, you're speaking my language here, because I was born and raised in a small Ontario town called Owen Sound, and spent most of my life until I was 16 in Owen Sound, did a bit of a stint in Winnipeg, and I've been in BC since I was 23. I did my first degree at Thunder Bay at Lakehead University. And our version of the outdoors, we would do moose hunting just outside of North Bay, a couple years with my old man. My first real like wilderness experiences, my mom and dad split, and my mom took us interior canoeing in Killarney and Algonquin. So one of her friends. So these two ladies with these three kids going in for 7 days, with everything you're going to need on your back and portaging. And I'm this 12-year-old chubby kid carrying a whole canoe. And that's when I think I first fell in love. But I mean, you hit that nail on the head with the lack of wilderness, like especially where I was from. Like there was nothing, like you could go to they did a really great job with what they had as far as campgrounds and stuff go in that Southern Ontario region, but there was no such thing as being any distance from a road or a farm or a piece of ag land, like nothing like what I've got in BC and you've got in Yukon. Like it was just, you do start to see that in like, when I did the degree in Thunder Bay and I did tree planting, so went up to like Hearst and like, there's definitely some bigger spots up there, but yeah, down south, there's just none of it.
Yeah, I know Owen Sound well. I played hockey against Owen Sound for a lot of years, and I know that area well. So you're literally a stone's throw from where I grew up.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, eh?
I don't know what your age, but we could have been like, we could have run across each other at some point, which is pretty neat. But yeah, but you did spend some time up in that that northern Ontario country, and that bush is legit up there.
100%.
You start talking about Hearst and Thunder Bay, and like those are, it's a really nice Canadian shield country. And it's funny because you did the whole canoe tripping thing, and that was really where I would say that I cut my teeth in getting out on my own,
right? And
really, pushing that wilderness aspect. And I did it. Started out with school trips in Algonquin Park. So very similar to what you're talking about. And when you grow up where we did, and then you get in that canoe with all of your stuff, and you start making your way across lakes and then putting it on your back and portaging, and you feel like you are on another planet.
100%
at that young age, right? Because we've never experienced it, and it's life altering.
Yeah.
And you actually just kind of reminded me of that, and those experiences to me, it sounds like were very similar to yours, and they might be the moments where you go, I need more of this. I need the West. And I think that's where we both landed up.
And the interesting part is, because I have this kind of like story in the middle of my life. I'm 43 now. And I really got back into passionate outdoors, I'm going to say in my early 30s, maybe about a decade ago. And I have this like period in the middle where I wasn't really as integrated with the outdoors due to a variety of reasons. And then when I got back into it, it was like coming home. And at first I didn't know why it felt like coming home. And it actually took quite a while for me to like reconnect with those childhood experiences and being like, and I have this saying that when I'm in the mountains, I feel more like me than anywhere else. Like it's the one place I can go where I don't feel like I have to think about what I'm supposed to say or how I'm supposed to be, or like I just feel natural. And like the harder it gets, the more natural I feel. Like I really crave that like intense challenge. And I think like it almost gets addictive. Like I've gone through periods where I have a hard time coming out because you've been in for 2 weeks. And I finally put my finger on it a couple of years ago, and it really harkens back to those initial canoe trips. It's the purity and the simplicity. Like we live in this society where we're inundated with like information and people and things and thoughts and pictures and media. And, I've got a kid, you've got kids, we've got significant others. Like your attention is constantly being dragged in all these. And we kind of get used to that, and we think that's how things are supposed to be. But then you go in the wilderness, and I like solo trips. I know you've got a propensity for solo trips, and I think, and I'm not going to call out group trips. I think there's a great time and a place for it. But there's just nothing else like that purity of a solo trip in the wilderness. And you start hitting days 3, 4, 5, and 6, and like all that BS starts to drop away, and you're forced to confront your own mind, and there's nowhere to run. And like you go through all those, like now you're really uncomfortable and you're remembering shit from when you were a teenager. And it's just like, it's such a trip, man. But like that was such a developmental part of me becoming who I am. Like, I don't know how else I would have become me if it hadn't been for those opportunities for growth. That the wilderness really, created the environment that made that possible?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head in that, the speed at which life is, whether it's, it's the TV, social media, it's all of this inundation with, bullshit in a lot of ways. And you just get it broken down and you get life into perspective when you do get out there by yourself. And that's, I just wish, it's kind of the double-edged sword, but you wish that some of these people that have never experienced it could just experience it once and understand what we're talking about. Because you can't understand if you don't get out of the city and you don't,
No.
and your idea of a wilderness excursion is a walk through the park. You can't get it. And then you've talked about, the next level is the solo experience.
Yeah.
And that literally is the next level because you have nowhere to run. Like it's you in your own brain. And unfortunately for me, over the last, number of years on a personal development side, with the television show, I haven't had those experiences
Right.
in a while. And, I feel a little bit jealous as you bring them up because they are life defining and they are experiences that you can only have when you go out and do it by yourself, and it's just you and your own brain, and you figure out whether you actually like yourself or not. And because there's nowhere to escape to. So those are the moments, and I'm a little bit jealous that you're getting those in because I haven't in a while, and it's just a matter of me just going out and doing it. It's not that I can't. It's just it's time. It's right. It's just like slow the things down and go out and do those things. But I totally hear what you're saying, and I 100% agree, and I believe that everybody should have them.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit because I'm kind of curious because I think you've got that same bug that I've got, this kind of you don't feel fulfilled unless you're testing the limits of your own potential. And I'm not going to make a value judgment about that. Some people have it, some people don't. That's okay. We're all a little bit different. But I'm kind of curious where that comes from. And one thing I'm curious about, were sports a big thing for you as a kid?
So yeah, definitely sports. I think that it all started. I'm super competitive, and it's competitive to to a fault sometimes, and I think that and it certainly was fostered through sports. But I was always a big team player. So growing up, in Ontario or growing up in Canada, certainly in those days, if you didn't play hockey, like there was probably, there was other reasons, but most people played hockey. Let's put it that way. So I grew up playing hockey, and that was my, my main sport. After I realized I wasn't going to the NHL, I played some university hockey, and then it was like, okay, let's figure out what's going on after that with sport. So sport has always been huge in my life. And the one common thing that's, from a young age of probably 14, once I started hunting, then, hunting has always been there, but different sports throughout the years have came and went. And I had a propensity for endurance athletics, but that wasn't something that was fostered in, the area that we grew up. Like nobody that I knew was an endurance athlete, right? It was, you either played hockey or baseball or you did nothing. So yeah, I had, but sport was obviously huge throughout my whole life, and still is. And it's just it's been a great ride, no matter, what I've been into, whether it's, the professional adventure racing career that I did for a long time. I was once I got out west, I really started to find my stride athletically, because I needed to leave Ontario to really be able to understand what it is that I was good at, right, and what I had a really a passion for. And that's leaving Ontario was certainly the best thing I could have ever done, in so many ways, but athletically for sure.
Okay, so You mentioned having a strong relationship with your father. I'm curious. Was he a tough guy? Were there harsh standards at home? Was it not so like how was that relationship? And do you think that impacted, gave you some of the drive, or how did that relationship affect you in that regard?
So it's he is an interesting character. Um and I do call him that because he is a bit of a character from time to time. But my father has had a huge impact in my life. Was he a tough, one of those tough kind of militaristic type fathers? Absolutely not.
Okay.
He was he a strong man? Absolutely. But he wasn't like a physically tough person on me.
Hmm.
He was unbelievably supportive. He coached my hockey team as a child. When I was playing junior hockey, my parents would, they wouldn't miss a game if they had to drive 3 hours, or 4 hours. They
Yeah.
just didn't miss a game. Those are the kind of parents that I have, and I have. And my mother was just an unbelievably caring. Um, you know, she is an unbelievably caring person, and I'm fortunate to have both of them in my life still. Um, and yeah, so it's a combination of both parents for sure. But my father was he was always driving in that he didn't necessarily know the technical way to teach me to get to the next level, but he certainly knew that mental toughness and just physical toughness were mandatory in the world.
Gotcha.
And he certainly taught me that those kind of things, if you wake up and you put your head down. And the other person in my life that I would really say fostered a work ethic was my grandfather.
Okay.
So I've been blessed to have amazing family support my whole life. And, I have to attribute a lot of success to that and having this stable environment that I always had, I always grew up in. So tough, like he's not a big man, not an opposing, his stature, but the kind of guy that if you got into the corner with, that you don't want to be there.
Right.
Unless he's on your side.
Yeah.
So he certainly fostered that never quit, do not back down. If it starts, you finish it attitude.
Yep.
And that's always stuck with me. And then as far as the work ethic goes, I believe it was my grandfather. He was a 4:30 in the morning guy that just, not the healthiest person, certainly farmer, but just, dig in and get out of bed, go to work, and you don't stop until the sun goes down. If you stop then, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he was I got to tell this story because it's huge to me. Is my grandfather, as he was getting older, and I think I was about 12 years old at the time. He had a heart attack, and he lived behind us. They moved off the farm, and he moved in behind us with my grandmother. And he had a heart attack, but he just didn't slow down. And he took a job at a farm, at a chicken farm, picking eggs. Okay. And so he went there and he worked there for a day. And then the next day, this is on a weekend, and he said, "Greg, you're coming with me tomorrow morning." I said, "Okay." 7 a.m. rolls around and I jump in his car. He drives us to the chicken farm. And after we spend 8 hours picking eggs, and it's hot and it sucks, it stinks. I don't know if you've ever been in a chicken barn, but it's not a fun place to be in the summertime. Let's put it that way. And so we worked the day, and I thought, okay, well, because I often just went with him wherever he was going and would work, whether it's cows or, whatever, we would just spend the day together. And so what happens next is he drops me off at home and he says, I'll see you tomorrow morning. And I'm kind of like, what? Thinking to myself, because you didn't say, you didn't, he was the kind of guy that you did not say, I'm not, anything. You just, okay. So he said, I'll see you in the morning. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess we're doing this again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so we go back there the next day, and at lunchtime, I see the boss, the owner of the farm, or the boss, the manager, and my grandfather's talking to him. And then my grandfather he waves to me, gets in the truck and drives away. And this was the start of the job that I had for the next 4 years, every weekend. And he took the job. And, in retrospect, I now know he took the job, not for him. He took the job to me. He literally told the boss, like, I wasn't even legal to have a job. That day, he told the boss, he said, Greg is going to pick the eggs every weekend, and I'll make sure that he's here every day, every Saturday, every Sunday, and I'll pick him up. He will be here. And literally got in his truck and drove away. And the boss was like, well, he came to me and said, I guess you're finishing the day off. And that was it. That was how I was raised. You're going to work, kid, whether it's not a choice, you're going to work. And I worked at that job for the next 3 years, almost every weekend of my life. And, it's funny. I ran into that boss, actually about 2 years ago, and I hadn't seen him for 20 years, 30 years or something almost. And he remembers that day like it was yesterday, and he was just, and now he's a big hunter and he watches TV, so it's pretty cool to.
So now he's like, hey, I know that kid.
He used to pick eggs. A long-winded way of, yeah. Exactly. So it was really built. It was a family thing where I got to get it all. And I think that's the key, is having different people in your life that can provide different aspects of positive energy. And you take the good, you take the bad, and you get it all figured out.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's helping to kind of shape the picture of who you are and kind of why you are the way you are. So let's jump forward a little bit, and we'll kind of gloss over the hunting for now. Talk to me about how adventure racing became a thing, or where your, like, the interest or the opportunity for that first arose.
Yeah. So adventure racing, what I was doing, my wife and we'd lived in the Yukon for a while, and I was really big into mountaineering. So like I had climbed Mount Logan and Mount McKinley or Denali. I was, into big wall climbing, and so that was kind of my thing. And to be prepared for those kind of endurance, mountaineering trips, I was doing a lot of running. And my wife was also a runner, or I would say she is the runner. And so I did a lot of running just for training. Okay. Then there was an adventure race that was coming to the Yukon. So the city of Whitehorse called me up, the tourism department, and they called me up and said, hey, Greg, can you put a team together to compete in this adventure race? So it's going to be a 450 kilometer race, and we want to have a local team. No local team has ever, finished one of these races that have been put on, and can you put a team together? So I was like, hell yeah. Not even really, like, I'd seen adventure races, but I had no idea what I was getting into. It was kind of like classic Greg, in that, of course I can do that.
Yeah.
And
we'll figure out how later.
Kind of figure it out as I go. Yeah. Well, little did I know how physically and mentally demanding that first race was going to be. Not just the first one. Like, I mean, my whole career was filled with, times that you thought that you couldn't take another step, or you didn't know what was around the next corner when it comes to racing. But yeah, so that's I put this team together. My wife, because my wife and I, so in adventure racing, you generally have to have one person of the opposite sex. So at the highest level, it's always one woman and 3 guys.
Okay.
99% of the time. And my wife, being a great endurance athlete runner, she was the obvious choice in the territory. So, well, there was actually one other woman who ended up doing the race, but who was also a really great athlete. They used to compete against Denise. But yeah, so we put together a team, 2 other guys, 2 other actually dog mushers who had great experience with sleep deprivation. So they did the Yukon Quest and the Iditarod, and they were both good athletes as well. So we put together this team of, I would say 2 people that had very little experience, had sleep deprivation, but we were physically strong, and the other guys, they complemented that with sleep deprivation, and we put together the team, and we ended up, I think, finished in 6th place or something in the first, but for the first Yukon team and the first local team to ever finish one of these races. So that was the start of it. But I do remember, Denise and I looking at each other on day 4, after she, well, we all went through these ups and downs of unbelievable emotions throughout that first race. But there was a time when Denise was like literally fetaled up and crying, just sobbing, and in the middle of the night, and you just got to keep going. And I remember about 8 hours later after that saying to Denise, like, and I'm, in a low place, I said, just remind me never to do this again. And she said, no problem. No problem. So, we finished that race in 4.5 days. And literally within the next 2 weeks, we were looking for the next race. It was,
how funny is that?
That experience. Yeah, that experience was absolutely probably the single most life-altering experience that I certainly ever had, and Denise would probably agree the same, because what we learned there, and it kind of goes back to the point of that you were making, that people getting out into the wilderness and experiencing these things on their own. Adventure racing tore me down physically, mentally, to the point where I know exactly who I am.
Okay.
And when you get to a place where you really figure out who you are, it's an amazing place to be. Whether it's figuring out your weaknesses are probably more important than your strengths. So that's what adventure racing did for me. And we went on to a 10-year career, and we raced all over the world. And we raced for the best teams in Canada, the best teams in the United States, and Europe. So we were fortunate to be able to race on a lot of different teams, and with a lot of amazing athletes. And that sport is one that will will give you the highest highs and the lowest lows. And it's an amazing experience to have had, for sure.
So, walk me through. I'm curious what the actual, what did that 450 kilometers look like? Like, what are the different disciplines, and is everybody doing everything? Do you guys switch off? What's the interdependency there between team members? How's that dynamic?
Yeah. So adventure race is like the ultimate team sport in the planet.
Okay.
So the race, basically what adventure racing is, it consists of 3 main disciplines, which is, one is trekking or running, all cross country and we navigate by map and compass, no GPSs. It's true, natural navigation. And then mountain biking and paddling. So whether it's a canoe or a kayak, and it's the 4 people on the team, when the start line, when you start the race, you don't finish the race until all 4 people on the team cross the finish line. And if one person drops out, you're all done. and it's, yeah, the race starts, and then you hit a series of, that particular race, and a lot of them is basically you don't get the course until, less than 24 hours before the race starts. Okay. So you show up at a location, and then this is the start line, and that's really all you know. They give you the course outline, up to 24 hours before the race starts, and you have to plot all of the checkpoints on the maps that you're given. And with, they give you UTM coordinates. So you have to figure out exactly where those checkpoints are. And if you screw it up in the, before the race even starts, and you plot a checkpoint in the wrong place on your maps, and you're navigating to the wrong place, then, well, you're just never going to find it, and your race is over. So it's the kind of race that it uses, you have to be aware at all the time. Whether it's whitewater kayaking or whitewater boarding, bodyboarding, or, ocean kayaking in huge swells in New Zealand, running through the bush in Australia where everything wants to kill you, including the poisonous plants that, that you rub up against them, and you can literally feel the poison 2 years later. And this is no joke. These are the kind of environments that these races are in. Mongolia, watching the sunrise in Mongolia, like just some of these most beautiful places on the planet, but yet the most remote about them too. So it's one thing that I really enjoyed about it, and that I think that probably a lot of people get that from hunting, that do these overseas trips, or that get out in the backcountry that hunting provides. Adventure racing certainly did that for me. So that's the gist of the sport. Often the kind of races that we did, that we really were focused on and were our best at, were these expedition style races that they call them. Okay. So you carry all your own stuff. It's like I said, it's the ultimate team sport where, if Greg's hurting, somebody else in the team will take my weight. If I'm feeling strong and we're on the bike, and I'll hook somebody on a tow line. And it's about traveling as fast and efficiently as you can with the whole team. And there's zero room for ego. The best teams on the planet check the ego at the door, because you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. One day you might be the best on the team, and a day later or hours later, you could be the worst on the team. Right. And when you look at the whole goal being that we all cross the line at the same time, as fast and as efficiently as possible, that's how you have to look at it, and which makes it the ultimate team sport, because there is no, single man for himself. Even in a hockey game, you've got power forwards, and you got guys that score more goals, and it's a team sport, but there's a lot of individuality that goes on to making up a lot of those sports where some people get the limelight and others don't. But that's where this sport just tears you down mentally more, as obviously it tears you down physically, and which creates to the mental anguish. But it's there's nothing. I'm so glad that I was involved in it. I'm so glad that I had the jam to say, yeah, I can do that. I can put a team together, way back when, because it changed my life. And I think it changed our whole family's life, because my wife and my outlook on things would be far different had we not adventure raced. There's really nothing, truly, there's nothing in life that is going to break me. Like, with the exception of, something catastrophic with your family, your most loved ones. But at the end of the day, that's not even going to break you either, because somebody's got to be the strong one. And so really, adventure racing has brought that out in both my wife and I. And no matter what happens, we're just going to get through it. Like, I know in my heart that if everything in my world burned down tomorrow, I would stand on the street -20 with the kids, as long as the whole family was there, and we would watch it burn, and then we would just pick up and we would just build it all again.
Yeah. Love it. So how does the hunting and the adventure racing and the more extreme kind of hunting, where is the relationship there? Like when you get to the Yukon, are you already starting to do some of that more kind of extreme backcountry hunting, or what's the timeline there?
Well, one of the first jobs that I had when I got to the Yukon was in the outfitting industry. So I took a job as a packer, or I was fortunate enough to get a job as a packer. So the rich dudes from the US would come in, and I would be their pack mule on a sheep hunt. So that's kind of was my first job in this industry. And it really started out or built the foundation for, what I expected from hunting. So I learned how to hunt at the sharpest end of the sword here in the Yukon. And so, but then again, that was like an opportunity came up. I applied to every outfitter I could that in the territory when I first got here. And I got interviewed by two, and they may have been the two grouchiest old buggers on the planet.
Of course.
And I realize now why I even got the interview, because they were so grouchy and nobody else wanted to work for them.
Right.
It was worth their salt, right?
Yeah.
So the funny thing about it is that I didn't get either one of those jobs. Because I knew nothing about horses. So the two probably most desperate, grouchy guys both denied me to come and work for them. So I ended up taking this job at a, what it's almost embarrassing talking about now, but I took a job at a men's clothing store because I was desperate for work.
Sure. And got to pay the bills.
And if you got to you got to stay in the Yukon. That was my thing. It's like, if I don't do this, I'm going to have to pack up and put my tail between my legs and go back to Ontario. And that's not happening.
Yeah.
So Greg, the men's clothing guy, which, I was terrible at it and I knew it, but this is how the world works. I was in the store, and this guy walks in a camouflage jacket. And I was like, okay, I got to talk to this guy. This is the first manly man that I've seen in this store. And or that was my perception anyways. So I stopped him and I started talking to him, and I started talking about hunting. I don't know exactly what I said, but the long and the short of it is this guy turned out to be, his name was Kelly Hogan, and he owned Arctic Red River Outfitters in the Northwest Territories.
Yeah, and I know Ben. Ben works for Arctic Red.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that's, so Kelly owned it at that time. And the great thing about Arctic Red was they didn't have horses because I knew nothing about horses. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't get the other jobs for sure. But, so I just asked him like, hey, like, what kind of hunting do you guys do? And he said, well, backpacking. And I was like, hey man, like cause now I started to go back to my canoe tripping days, back carrying a backpack in Algonquin Park. And I said, like, I knew I could do that because I could portage for miles with a canoe under my shoulders and a pack on my back. So I was pretty confident. I say, like, I can carry a pack wherever you need me to go. I can do it. And maybe in retrospect, I was shooting above my pay grade and just kind of saying, yeah, I can do that. And there's this common theme, I guess, in my life where I was like, you know what, I can do it. And I don't know that I can do it, but I'm just going to do it. And that's how I got that job. And I've been in the industry, off and on my whole life since that time. And like I said, was fortunate to be at the sharp end of the sword when it comes to big game hunting in not only North America, but in the world.
So I feel like we're going to skip
how
over
adventure racing then became, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So to answer the question about adventure racing, that's kind of where it started. And then those two collided once I started to race professionally. Then it was just, I need to do this style of hunting because it just brings me so much pleasure. Right. So that's where those two kind of came together in these long treks. And now since then, I've become a pilot and I have my own airplanes and I just really love getting into the wild places and trying to just put as much physical effort into it as I can, and make it interesting that way.
So, and this is where I was saying earlier, I feel like we're going to skip over a bunch of stuff, but I want to be, aware of how much time of yours I'm taking. And I'm curious because you're a little bit ahead of the curve, because the whole backpacking thing it's huge right now. Like everybody wants to be the next Darren Snyder or the next, Greg McHale. Like everybody wants to be the next big backpack hunter. But like that is and I think some people forget how recent of a trend that is. Like it didn't even really exist to this extent as little as 5 years ago as it does now. And your content in that regards is kind of ahead of the curve. What made you think I'm going to do a TV show? Because I also know how that works. And it's not like a magic fairy just kind of tapped you on the shoulder and said, here's a TV show. Like it's much more, I'm sure it was much more about creating your own thing, pitching it the whole 9 yards. Where did the initial drive or vision for that kind of come from?
Yeah. So I've not talked about this in the past because I think that in a ways I've kind of forgot about it. And, as the more people ask you these questions, you kind of put it all together. But the reality is my father had a television show on cable TV in Ontario called Outdoors Ontario. So it was mainly, it was mainly him. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was, and it was on Shaw cable. It was just a cable show.
Yeah.
And I did a few episodes with him, but he, it wasn't a job. It was a hobby.
Okay.
He had a real job, but it was a hobby and it lasted for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years at the most. But it was during a time when I was, really heavy into athletics and into hockey. So it was, I wasn't really super involved in it, but, in retrospect, now I look back, 20, 30 years later, and I realized that, wow, that was the foundation of it all. But, I'd been in the Yukon for a lot of years before it really came to fruition, where I don't know, like a lot of things in my life, sometimes, some of the best ideas happen with some good friends around a campfire and a glass of rum. And that's where Wild Yukon was created. A great friend, my best friend, Ryan Leaf, he works for Jim Shockey. And if anybody in this hunting industry, they might, a lot of people would know him. He and I were going to start this together. And as life happens and people have to make decisions, Ryan decided to go and work for Jim. And I said, well, I'm going to do this anyways. So that's kind of where it started. We have a number of businesses, and the team that I work with now has been here from the very start. And my, Dave, my main videographer, he came over from Czech Republic and he started working for me at our tourism business. And great athlete. I saw some ability in him. He created this little video, and I said, "Hey, Dave, do you want to come shoot some hunting with me?" And that was the start of it. And it's never stopped. And Carl, he's been there really from the start, taking photos, and, both those guys were the main crew. It's the three of us. Obviously we have a lot of support. My wife does a lot with the company. We have a couple other managers that do, work with the company. So it's, but it's been kind of homegrown in a lot of ways. And I guess the inspiration, whether I knew it or not, would have come from my father way back when.
That's wild, man. It's funny how everything comes full circle. This is a little bit off topic, but I had this realization the other day. So I had this falling out with my old man and that side of the family. Let's call it like 14, 15. And I did 2 years of moose hunting with them before that. I think 13 and 14. And then we have this falling out for reasons we don't need to get into. And I don't really speak to them for probably almost close to a decade. And I come out west, and what brought me out west was tree planting. And it's interesting, you talked about adventure racing for you being that like very like pivotal experience where you kind of like leapt up into like the next version of yourself. That first year I went tree planting, I was doing a degree at Thunder Bay. I went tree planting up in Hearst. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever been the best at anything. Like I just wasn't that guy. I was good enough, but I never had that serious drive. I'd never had the ability. I'd never been the best. And when I got to tree planting, for starters, it's piecework. So I was like, so you mean the more these that I put in there, the more money I'm going to get at the end of the season? And they're like, yeah, that's how it works. I'm like, okay. And I remember at the end of my first year of university, I developed a really strong relationship with my calculus professor, who also happened to be an ex-tree planter. And he's like, before the end of the season, we're having this conversation, excuse my French, but he's like, listen, you're going to go to camp. There's 2 rules. You don't give a shit about anything else. Where's my land? Where's my trees? You don't have a right to anything else except land and trees. You don't care about the food. You don't care about where you're sleeping, and I'm getting into this, like I'm getting fired up. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, man. And it was like everybody else kind of showed up for like this vacation, and I showed up for land and trees. So it was like first guy out of the bus in the morning, last guy in the bus at night. And my rookie season, I set the company record in history. 7,038 trees in 11 hours and 55 minutes. So I planted an average of 660 trees per hour for 12 straight hours. And nutrition was not my strong suit. This was on Coca-Cola and oranges. I shit you not, man. That was all I had.
My God.
All day. But it was like, that was that first time when I'd had this like imagined ceiling of potential and then smashed through it. And then that creates this realization, well, if that was an imagined ceiling of potential, then what else is what other imaginary barriers have I created for myself that aren't real, that are only there because of my lack of imagination? And so anyways, then I proceed to go out west. I do all these things.
Your own limiting beliefs.
100%. I proceed to go out west, and I almost like comically masculine. Like I keep putting myself, I'm doing heli shows, and then I become a forestry engineer, and I'm doing remote stuff on Haida Gwaii, and I'm living in these camps, and like it's just a crazy life. And I realized I didn't put it together until it was actually a little while ago. It was this lack of closure of this transition into manhood with my father, because he never gave me that like nod that like, okay, you're a man now. So when I left at 14 and never spoke to them, because it was my 2 uncles and my grandfather's also this like super powerful figure in my memory. They were the ones that they saw me as this boy. So I went out into this like wilderness world and work world feeling like a boy. And I always felt like I had a chip on my shoulder and I needed to prove I was a man. So not only did I go that far, I went like, and it was so funny. I can remember going back to my grandmother's funeral when I was like 24, 25, hadn't seen anybody in a really long time. I've done degrees, I've done like crazy accomplishments. And my father is showing people this picture of me tree planting on the side of a mountain with my hand on the skid of a helicopter. Cause you can like, as you're well aware, you can kind of like manhandle a helicopter by the skid, and we would load up like the empty bag. So there's this picture of me, looks like pretty badass, right? On the side of the mountain with this. And I was like, that's what stood out to him. Do you know what I mean? Like all the other kind of cool stuff I'd done, but his boy was on a mountain with a helicopter. And it was, anyways, this is a very long-winded way of me coming back that the realization that I had was this, like, all of this was like this search, this kind of quest to like transition into a man. And, you know, long story short, well, actually long story long, my old man's coming out in September. This is the second time he's come out for a hunt, and we're flying out of Deese, and I'm taking him and my brother for 10 days for caribou. And it's like, it's so wild how the tables have turned. Like from us being at the end of a logging road in North Bay in a wall tent to me flying them out of Deese to go spend 10 days in a teepee in an ultralight wood stove. And now it's like, you know, I'm the one leading instead of the one following. Like, it's pretty badass to have, you know, all that. And now the relationship's fine and everybody's good. And but a lot of that is like the wilderness and that the experiences you have out there.
I think that's though, like listening to your story, and I'm not, you know, I don't know that if you are, you're not giving yourself enough credit, but you went and did something, you had the understanding that you need to create the man because there's nobody there that has helped you do this. Yeah. And that in and of itself is, I think, is rare, because nowadays, you know, not to get off on a different topic, but nowadays, just what is a man?
Right.
And to be able to go and do that, create that all by yourself. Like, I know that what I do every day with my son is, I know, like, I've got the vision. I've got, it's a methodical laid out plan here. Yeah. I am going to build this man because society is not going to do it for him. No. Is not going to help him build what we consider a man, and what I consider a man should be, and not being the kind of guy that stands up when it's time to stand up, that provides for his family, that makes sure, and this might be old school, but guess what? When my kid, hopefully, if all goes as planned, when he stands up and somebody says, okay, who's going to be counted? Like, he's at the front of the line. Yeah. And he's ready to take it on, where what we're building in society now is just weakness, and it's saddening to see. And I know that, you know, the truth is that I believe that I'm setting him up for complete domination, because what I see him competing against is complete weakness. Yeah. And to get back to where this whole point of this is, there are people that can do it, that can create that life for themselves and be the man that they were born to be, even though it's not fostered, you know, growing up. And I think that's a testament to you to have went out and done that. And whether it's, you know, whether you're proving to your father that you can do it, or whatever the reason is, it still drove you to be the best that you could, you know, that you could be, and to do a pile of cool shit. Yeah. And ultimately, you know, when it's all over, it's, you know, were you there? Were you there did you stand up to be counted, or did you cower, and did you know, fold up and go play video games? And I think that's, you know, we obviously know the answer to that.
100%. Okay, so this makes a great transition point, but I want to do a time check here, because we're hitting the hour. You got a little bit more time, or you got to go?
I'm good.
Okay, so
I'm good.
I think this is a perfect segue into the kind of your philosophy, because a lot of days, you know, Matt Ranella just wrote this article, and I've talked about it a couple times in the podcast. And I think he actually had some great points in that article that got lost because he was a little bit too hyperbolic about some of the stuff. But us being too focused on engagement because of rack size and stuff, I think he nailed it, and I'm not going to argue with any of it. And I think a lot of people, a lot of content creators out there these days, And like, I'm not an idiot. I've got a YouTube channel. I've got an Instagram account. I know the things that generate engagement, and they're salacious. People like big horns and dead things. And where I'm going with this is that, yeah, you're a successful hunter, and you've definitely taken down your share of very high caliber animals. But it seems like there's more of an underlying philosophy that drives you, which ties in nicely to what we were just saying, that probably, and maybe it wasn't even the most important thing when it started, but I would hazard a guess that it's the most important thing now as to why you create content, whether it be, you know, the morning IG stories or the TV show itself. But maybe share a little bit about what is your philosophy in that regard, and what do you see as your responsibility as far as your voice in the world and what you want to be remembered for in that regard?
Yeah, I think that it's a deep question. You know, what do I want to be remembered for? I think that anybody that goes in and creates a television show and certainly puts their name on it has a certain level of narcissism.
I'm not going to argue as a guy who did the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did it, and I thought long and hard about it. Whether, I knew I was going to do the television show, so you're going to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
But are you bold enough to put your name to it? And I felt, you know what, is like, I've never shied away from adversity. I've never shied away from confrontation. And if you don't like the content, or you think it's too arrogant that you put your name on it, I really don't care, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's about, is the content quality, and are you giving back? Are you giving more than you're taking?
Right.
And right. I think that I like to believe that I am. So, what do I want to be known for? I just, in a lot of ways, I want people to recognize that not all hunters are these fat dudes sitting in a tree stand over a bait pile.
Yeah.
Like this is not all that hunters are. And up until not that low, I've been we'll be starting producing season 6, but there was nobody doing what I do.
Yeah. And
all the television shows that you see is like these whitetail hunting, and I grew up in whitetail country, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not carving it up, but there's way more to hunting than just building crops so you can grow these big bucks and then, sit in a tree stand. And that's great. It's just not for me.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to carve anybody up. I'm trying to identify and hope that people recognize that Western hunting is a very physically demanding. It's mentally demanding. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. And for me, I just wanted when it comes to hunting, I wanted to be the best that I could be. And for me, that meant you better be an adventure race style hunter. You can't be weak in any discipline. So I need to be able to fly my own airplanes. So that meant I had to go and get my license. I had to buy my own airplane. I had to be able to do that. I had to be physically stronger than anybody else out there that in the mountains. I had to be able to endure more pain in the mountains. And I had to be a good teammate while I was out there as well. So this is what adventure racing, kind of brought me. You got to be a good shot. You got to be able to do all of the research. You have to, if you want to be able to find big animals. And it's not even about the antlers or the horns for me.
Right.
Like it really isn't, because like 2 years ago, I didn't even kill a ram because I was just trying to find, a big ram.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I spent way more time in the mountains than any other year looking for sheep and passing sheep up. And and that in and of itself taught me a few things, taught me that, you know what, it's really not about the horns. And I walked away from that season. I didn't feel disappointed, but I felt that, you know what, I don't need to do that again either.
Right.
You enjoy the hunt and enjoy the time that you're out there. And now I try to do it as much as I can with family members, right, because it just makes me really happy.
Yeah.
So I feel that I've achieved what I wanted to achieve for me on a physical and emotional level, as far as trying to be the best, mountain hunter that I could be. And I think that it requires the ability to do it all, where you don't need to depend on a single person or anything to do it for you. And that's where I had to be well-rounded, just like an adventure racing athlete. So, but what now, to move on again, to answer your question, what do I want to be known for? I think that it's a kind of a moving target.
Okay.
And that's kind of what my goal was, I really want people to understand what a good mountain hunting athlete or, mountain hunter looks like, and try to portray that as best I can. But now it's really moved into, I want to affect people's lives in a positive way.
Yes.
Like, I want to be able to help people get up in the morning and move forward and be the best version of themselves on any given day. And, paint the picture or show the path to that. And by just, giving a few tips, or just, a few motivational, just something that might just flip the switch that somebody needed to just make a change in their life for the positive, and that being mentally and nutritionally. I think those are the three foundations of a successful life.
100%.
That's what I want to be known for.
Yeah, I love it. And it's funny. I can look back on my own history, and people always ask me, like, why backcountry? Why backpack hunting or backcountry hunting? And I'm like, for me, I'm at the point where it's like the perfect culmination of all these separate disciplines. Like, I went through a big CrossFit phase, and I'm like, I was like, I'm close to finding what I need. Then I went through a big jiu-jitsu, competed a lot phase, and I'm like, this is closer. Because now we've got some competition. We've got some facing another individual. And then when it was like, when I found backpack hunting, I was like, okay, the underlying goal here is the development of self. And you can use whatever vehicle you want in order to facilitate that growth. But just for me, and I think for you, and for guys like us that have this like combination of like cognitive drive, like you want something that's going to be like mentally challenging and taxing, and also, psychologically and emotionally challenging while incorporating that physical challenge. Like, there's not another discipline that I can think of that brings, I can see how adventure racing would definitely be close, but then again, without that animal there, and that like you competing, like it's just that perfect culmination of all those individual disciplines for me that brings everything together, that I haven't found anything else that does it like that.
Yeah. It's mountain hunting. That's why when, I just came back from the sheep show, and it's just a different experience when you get a bunch of mountain sheep hunters together. Like, it's a different vibe than it is when you get a bunch of, whitetail hunters together. It's completely different. And in my opinion, it's way better, but that's just because I love mountain hunting and not so much sitting in a tree stand. Yep. I seem like I'm beating up on tree stand hunters, which I'm not trying to do, but it's not the same. And I don't care what anybody says.
No, I would agree. Okay. We're going to jump over here. Because everybody was kind enough to post some Instagram questions, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask them, and I'd get a bunch of angry messages. The first one I'm going to ask is from my buddy Bob, because he's a big fan, and he was one of the first guys who asked me to to have you on. So I'm going to read the question word for word so don't screw it up. When you talk to Greg for the podcast, can you ask him about his Gunworks rifles and in particular his barrel length on each? And he knows you shoot a 7 SAUM and a 300. So I think essentially he's curious about barrel length on those two rifles.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Bob, for suggesting I come on the podcast first off. But yeah, so on those Gunworks rifles, they're both 20-inch barrels. Okay. And you know, that's the quick and dirty answer on it. But yeah, so before, you know, complete openness, I am not a gun nut. And what and I shouldn't say gun nut. I am not the kind of guy. My brain doesn't work like measuring ounces of, you know, of powder and sitting down. That's not who I am. I'm about you know, getting out there and getting the job done, doing what I need to do to be the best shooter that I can be, to actually just put the animal down. So I love the fact that guys are so passionate about the technical aspects of whether it's shooting or whether it's, you know, ballistics. And I can so appreciate that. There's a reason why I was just an average student, and because I probably didn't have that, you know, attention to detail that those kind of things require. So if I don't give you much more than that, Bob, that's the reason why.
I love it, man. Well, I think this is why we all need a gun nut buddy. Right? Because I'm the same way. And to be honest, I'm more of an archery guy. Like my true passion is archery, but I like shooting a rifle. And I've just actually, it should be here Monday, got what I'm calling like my first flashy rifle. Like I was a diehard Tika guy before, and I was like, if it shoots straight, why do I need anything else? But I got a Fierce and 300 PRC with the carbon fiber barrel. I'm very excited. But again, I relied on people. Like there's a guy, Omer, down here who runs Precision Optics. And I got a couple other buddies I text with. And it was like, I'm just going to rely on your experience. Like just put something in my hands that will do what I need it to do downrange when I do what I need to do at the trigger.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of my philosophy too.
Okay, so this one is rather interesting, and I think I know what he gets by this, but this guy says, your thoughts on why some say stones are unique to BC. And then he says marketing, supply, and demand. So I think he means, is there an argument that people say stone sheep are actually only inside of British Columbia? Do you got any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, there was a study done recently within the last few years. I don't know if you're familiar with it, and I'm just going to kind of try to paraphrase, and don't quote me on any of this stuff, because again, my attention to detail is not what some people would consider it should be. But so there was a genetic testing done, and they on sheep throughout British Columbia and the Yukon, on thin-horn sheep. And they essentially found out that the genetic alteration, there's a definitive line almost between British Columbia and the Yukon, where or in British Columbia, for the most part, are all stone sheep. And anything north of that kind of that Yukon highway, the Alaska highway, is considered Dall sheep. Now they still could be dark, and they could be have that, you know, that dark hair trait, phenome or whatever it's called. But so then there's that whole category of fannin sheep and you know, Dall sheep. Like, you know, I've killed lots of pure like Dall sheep that have black hair in them, and they're nowhere near stone sheep country.
Right.
So yeah, I do believe that there almost is this definitive line, and because genetically, from what I understand, the science has proven that's the truth. So hopefully that answers the question. Yep. So yeah, BC's got stone sheep, the Yukon really don't. Okay. But there's this push to have the second or third category of fannin sheep,
right? And
there's certainly some of some marketing that would play into that as well. So I think maybe that's what he's alluding to, is the cost of sheep hunts,
Yeah.
and how marketing goes into jacking up the price of sheep. So, anybody that has dark sheep in the Yukon are going to call them stone sheep because they're valued at more. They're just valued more.
Right.
So they want to charge a higher price for them. And I mean, that's economics and marketing. And I don't foresee the day that, somebody considers a dark sheep in the Yukon to not be a stone, because there are too many people, too much money out there that have killed stone sheep, killed dark sheep in the Yukon, that call them stone sheep, and don't want to be looking for another stone sheep because they just have to have the stone sheep, right? Yeah. Because that's just going to cost a lot of money. Yeah. So I don't foresee the day when that's going to happen. But I think that genetically, it sounds to me, from what I understand, that there's definitely a line. Yeah. And Yukon doesn't have stone sheep.
Okay, good to know. Go-to footwear for river crossings.
Take your boots off and walk across.
I love it. I'll give a second recommendation to Wiggy's waders. I've had good luck with those. If you do actually want to carry something in your pack, I think they're maybe 11 ounces.
Yeah, but come on. Do you really want to carry those in your pack?
I love it, man. Yeah. Come on. Fair enough. Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah.
Like, if you want to, go ahead. Like, yeah. I mean, I'm all like, I know dudes that roll into the mountains with 70-pound packs at the start of a hunt. And if that's your gig, then, hopefully you're comforting yourself enough that you can stick it out, more days in the end. That's how I look at it.
Now, do you bring a second pair of footwear? Because I know some dudes will do that, and they'll bring like camp Crocs with them, so at least they're not going to get their boots soaking wet when they go across. Or are you just stripping down to everything, and are you going barefoot, leaving your boots on, or you got a secondary pair of like lightweight Crocs or something for camp?
Yeah, I've never carried a second pair of shoes, camp shoes. I will admit that I've been jealous when I see guys that do it. But I've never carried it. Either when I come to a creek crossing, I either just take my boots off and just go barefoot, or I just walk through it with my boots on.
Okay. I love it.
And it really depends on where I am in the hunt and how wet I am at that point. Anyways, if I'm completely dry and it's early in a hunt, then I'll just go barefoot. And if I'm already wet and it's been raining, and then I'll just walk through and won't really care.
Yeah. Only one gun, sheep to moose. What are you using?
To moose. We're not including bison in here, right? So sheep to moose. It's a tough one because the two calibers that I run are super close. I could get it all done with the 7 SAUM.
Okay.
But I love the 300 Win Mag.
Yeah, me too. That's what my Tika is. And I love how, I'm like a one gun guy because it just makes it simpler to me, but I love my 300 Win Mag, and everything it touches falls over. It's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally everything those things touch fall over. So it's really tough but you still throw bison in there, and then it's the 300 all day long.
Okay. Tips for what to do with your food and pack at night when you don't have trees around to hang it up and bears are a risk.
People don't want to hear this. I don't. I literally sleep with my food in my tent.
Yeah, same.
Because no bear is walking into my tent and going to take my food and wreck my hunt.
Yeah.
You're going to get wrecked before my hunt gets wrecked because you eat all of my food. I literally sleep with it all.
Yeah. It was, I was solo elk hunting, I think a couple of years ago, and I went to go hang my food up. And then I was walking back to the tent, and I'm like, and I'm deep at this point. And I'm like, you know what? No, because that's worse for me, I think, than at least the bear waking me up, and at least then I can do something about it. I was like, nah, you're coming back. You're coming back with me. So again, I do think it's, I think it's one of those things that everybody's going to have their own like comfort level, but recognize you should have at least asked yourself the question, if you wake up and your food's gone, what's the plan? Because I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Yeah. And like my gun is beside me, loaded, ready to go no matter what.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll know if a bear's sniffing around my tent. And if that means I have to blow a shot out through the bottom of my tent, not even at the bear, and obviously I know where everybody else is. And it's not like somebody's going to, I really don't worry about it that much. And maybe this is an aside, maybe because living in the Yukon and bears are not, habituated to humans.
Okay.
I've never really run into a problem,
right,
of a bear coming in and, wanting to eat the food in camp.
Yep. Yeah.
But
I've been very
knock on
lucky.
wood.
And I was a forestry engineer in BC for 15 years. I've probably had 200 black bear run-ins, and I've never had a negative bear encounter. And I think bear awareness and understanding how to, and not doing dumb shit. So if you know how to engage with the bear when you do engage with the bear, and then not doing dumb shit that's going to put you in a bad spot when you engage with the bear, I think solves more problems than most people would care to look at.
Yeah. Bear aware. That's the, that's
100%. Where would you recommend people go to learn more about adventure racing? Somebody's heard about it, they understand about it, they want to do one. Is there like a particular website or a society or anything that they should look at?
I think that, if you want to become more aware, the Adventure Racing World Series is just something, just Google it, right?
Yeah.
And what, like, Eco Challenge, that's the sport. If you've ever looked at that, really just Google it and find out. Cause I don't know what there is because it's a fringe sport.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know many people that do it, and certainly that do it for a lot of years and at the highest level, because it's bloody hard.
Yeah.
So you got to be prepared. If you want to get into adventure racing, it's going to suck but that's the pleasure in it. It's the pleasure in the pain. And that's what society lacks so much of, in my opinion, is that we're all soft and we just want to, get through the day, and everything should be easy. And, no one can hurt someone's feelings and all of this bullshit. It's just like, go out, feel the pain, and figure out what you're made of. Yeah. And it's not easy to find information on adventure racing that I know of. I've been out of the sport for a while, but yeah, go look it up. I couldn't recommend any sport more than that one. But knowing that it's going to be hard, and you're going to get so many amazing rewards from finding out who you are in tough, hard situations. Yeah. Do it. If you want to know something, it's like anything else. If you want to know bad enough, you're going to find all of the information, right? And just whoever asked that question, please go do your first adventure race. Figure it out, because you will be so well rewarded for the experience when it's all over.
Love it. I got to give a shout out to my buddy Tanner, who is the founder of Frontiersman Gear. He's a knifesmith here in BC, and he wants to know what you're using for blades on your mountain hunts.
Ooh, well, come on, Tanner. I do have a couple of your knives, and they're amazing.
So this is I'm discovering now this is a well-placed plug.
Is this a technical question?
This is
Is this a technical question that he's asking me? Are we talking about the style, or not the style and or type of metal that's being used? Because if that's what you're asking, Tanner, I don't know the answer, just like, my ballistics. Nope. Tanner, I've used Tanner's knives. They're amazing. I also use Benchmade. They're fantastic knives. They both sharpen up really easily. I used to use a kind of Havalon scalpel blade type knife, but away from that in the last number of years, and more to a traditional, light knife like the ones Tanner is making, and Benchmade knives that I'm using. So there's Tanner. Thanks for that.
Well, it's kind of funny. That's my challenge this year.
I do need to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do need to say thanks, because Tanner actually built me a knife, and he engraved, my name on the sheath and built it out of sheep horn. So the guy's building great stuff. So I will. It should be a plug for him too.
Yeah, that's my challenge this year, is that I've been on a Havalon Piranha, and after having Tanner on the podcast, I ordered a custom kind of hunting knife, but I'm going to switch to a permanent blade processing knife as well. And I've never had great sharpening skills. Like, it's just been a skill that I haven't spent the time to develop. So I love the Havalon, because you just rip off the cover, slap another blade on, go to town.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing now I'm just being lazy. Like, just learn how to sharpen a good knife, get one knife, take care of it. And then it's also, you don't have all these problems of all these disposable blades, which are always a pain in the ass out in the field. Like, where am I going to put this so I don't cut myself in half with it half an hour from now?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, that I think that we all, using, I find that those blades, the scalpel style blade, I'm more concerned about cutting myself with it. Yeah. Like, I've cut myself with that thing more times than, and there's no forgiveness.
None.
Like,
no.
So you don't even know it sometimes. No. Right. Yeah.
Okay, we got two more here, then we're going to wrap it up. Buddy of mine wants to know healthy snack options. He knows that you and your wife are very focused on nutrition. So let's maybe just let's say backcountry. What are, and maybe even some DIY stuff, or healthy snack options.
Well, my wife is an amazing cook. Which is obviously is a great thing to have in your family, but she's also very health conscious. So we have a couple recipes that we've built, or she's put together, that we eat in the field religiously, and they're great. I know, one of them is like an energy ball, but what I'm going to do is I'll get those links to you, and maybe you can post it with this. And so if anybody's looking for kind of homemade healthy options in the mountains that are high energy, high protein, exactly what you need in the mountains to keep you going through the day, then everybody can have that recipe and maybe try it out for themselves.
That would be great, man. I'll absolutely put that in the posted notes and selfishly use it for myself. I don't even know if this is possible, but somebody wants you to rank from easiest to most difficult sheep species to hunt.
Oh, are we talking North American sheep?
Sure. Let's put some boundaries on it, just so just simplify
sheep.
It a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Not having had not having killed some of these species myself, but having knowledge about the sheep and the style of hunts. Easiest, desert, then dull sheep. Then I would probably go this is where it gets challenging, is the bighorn versus the stone sheep. Getting a good bighorn in BC and Alberta, from what I understand now, is super challenging.
Yep.
Not necessarily due to the terrain that they're in, as much as the access to them.
Yep.
So it's going to be a toss up between the stone and the bighorn, but probably I have to go. So from easiest, let's go desert, dull sheep, stone sheep, and bighorn, because I think that there's just a lot less bighorns to go around.
That makes sense. Greg, I can't thank you enough, my friend. This has been amazing. I'll pass the floor over to you. Any closing thoughts or anything you want to share? Anything upcoming you want people to be aware of? Let us know.
Yeah, no, not really. One thing that I really want to, am really trying to, like I alluded to earlier, that is the most important thing to me, right now in my life, is really just trying to help people become, the better version of themselves. And I've created this, what I call the 10 minutes of do the work. And it's just getting people moving every day for 10 minutes, that, we can all do 10 minutes. I put a new workout on my Instagram every day, and my commitment to the community, or to myself as much as everybody else, is that I will never miss a day. And that's, I've been doing it now for months, and I've, knock on wood, I've not had to miss a day. But when I'm out in the mountains, then my wife will be putting them up. But ultimately what it is the 10 minutes of do the work is, in my opinion, is just an introductory start for people to focus on something small and manageable that they can achieve a win every day. And that whole thing started out with six of my lifelong childhood friends, and the recognition that we're getting older, and some of the team is not going in the right direction. And that's where the 6 minutes started, the 10 minutes started with these six guys. And every day my buddies are doing the work to 10 minutes, and it's been life altering for most of them. So I'm really proud of that. And if I can give that to, to my community, to the world, to anybody out there, and it's not just about hunters, it's just about everyone improving their life one little bit at a time. And that's my goal. So if I can help anybody, DM me, send a message. If you need to ask a question, I'm all ears, and we will, sometimes it's challenging to get everything answered, but I work hard to do it, and our team works hard to make sure that nobody gets left behind. And that's my goal.
Fantastic. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Once again, I want to thank you for taking the time, Greg. This has been great, man. So thank you very much. And we'll have to get you back on maybe, as our seasons ramp up or ramp down at some point. Love to touch base and see what you got planned.
Great. Thanks, Jay. I really appreciate you having me, and take care, and all the best.
All right. You too, man. Have a good day, Greg. Well, there you have it, guys. My interview with Greg McHale. Really cool guy, man. That was a very interesting conversation to have, and I agree with a lot of his insights. As always, if you could take a moment to engage with the platform, like, comment, share, subscribe, it would greatly help the channel and the program grow. I always really appreciate that. And as always, thanks for tuning in.